My favorite sponsor and your favorite sponsor, apparently, because you guys have been going to palomaverdecbd.com and using code BUCK for 20% off your order quite a bit. I've become their best advertiser, and I'm happy to do that for them because I love them as people. They're a wonderful family. They support this show, and I love their products. They've got all kinds of things, including some new ones because of this new farm bill that's been passed. They've got, of course, regular full-spectrum unflavored CBD tinctures. They've got these new THC-V gummies. They've got the massage oil you know about. They've got the sleeping bundle if you guys need some help sleeping. If you're sore, they have these CBD bath bombs, but me personally, I have to go for the cool menthol sports cream. If you guys lift and work out, it's the most effective sports cream I've ever used. They've got things for your pets, the CBD dog chews, pet tinctures. They've got so much CBD salve. A lot of the stuff now has this THCV in it, and it's a minor cannabinoid found in the Cannabis sativa strain. It's isolated from the hemp plant for their line. A lot of people call it diet weed. Anyway, go check it out. They're wonderful people. These products are really good. They work. I promise you that. I use the products that I advertise. Let's put it that way. And again, it's at palomaverdecbd.com. Enter promo code BUCK at checkout and get you 20% off of your order. Let's get to the show.
You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call the hologram wrath. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. Great to have you riding with us here this week, where I'm bringing you a great discussion with friend of the show, your friend and my friend, Marc Clair of, as you've been hearing in the ads, now the Marc Clair Show, formerly of Lions of Liberty. And like I've said in these ads that I know you guys have heard, what Marc is doing is he's stepping out of the confines of speaking at things in a strictly political nature. Let's say that. So he's going further. There's more layers to so many things other than just political. And he's doing that in this new show. We're going to talk about kind of his growth, the evolution of one Marc Clair, as some people call him, the dark Marc Clair. We're going to talk about all of that. And as this episode drops, you have to hear his show this week. It is with Father Turbo Qualls. It is excellent. And I highly recommend listening to that discussion between Marc Clair and Father Turbo. Also, by the way, I'm on yet another ban from YouTube. I keep getting these now. This is the second one within a month or so. So I'm hoping if things go as planned, you could be watching this on my new Rumble channel. And at some point, I guess next week, we'll say, you can also watch it on my YouTube channel, but I can't post it there at the moment because, again, I've got a ban and I can't post things when this strict ban is on. But again, I believe this should be on my Rumble channel. Right, Bobby? Bobby's my video guy, so I think he's going to work on that. I hope it happens. Let's just get to this discussion with my buddy and your friend of the show, Marc Clair. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Buck, I'm fantastic. It's always a pleasure to be, well, I guess I'm not technically in the Counterflow studios as I was a couple months ago, but it's nice to be virtually in the studio either way.
Yeah, good. I hope to remember most of this night at least. So
I don't have to fill in the gaps later like last time.
Let's talk about, we talked about some stuff on a live version I did with you, but we're going to get into some different directions for this one. But first,
I'm sober this time too, so maybe we'll be a little smoother in our presentation.
I'll let you have the floor briefly here, and then we'll jump into it, and you tell anyone anything you want about the show, yourself, where you're at now.
Oh, wow. I assume you covered the basics in your intro. So I mean, as most of your audience will know, I hosted and the flagship podcast at Lions Liberty for 9 years or so. And somewhere I'd say earlier this year, I mean, you could even trace it back further, maybe 2021, 2020, I started to just get, as anybody who's been following along knows, I went from a libertarian podcaster to someone slowly questioning some of the strategies, at least in the beginning, I would say, about libertarianism, to slowly feeling like I was always in combat with libertarians while still hosting a libertarian podcast. And to be perfectly honest, a large reason I hung on to it for so long under that brand was, well, one was that we put so much time and effort into it. So I wasn't going to just give up that brand without really having done some deep sort of meditation on it and really made sure I was doing the right thing. But just really my friendship with Brian and John, I've known these guys since well before there was anything known as Lions of Liberty. We go back a couple of decades at this point. So I really loved doing the show with them. I really loved being business partners with them. So, it wasn't like, it was almost like a relationship where you kind of know it's over, but you don't really hate the person, and maybe you share some stuff and some bills. So it's like, I don't know, that's a lot of work to separate the whole thing. So you just kind of don't do it for a while. That's kind of where I was with those guys, but it couldn't have been any more of an amicable breakup. I pretty much just shot them an email and just told them what I was feeling, how I felt like I had to go in a different direction, that it didn't really feel right to be as part of a libertarian brand at this point. And they agreed completely, also very amicably. So it was almost like they kind of saw it coming too, which I guess in hindsight, they know me better than almost anybody. So if they, of course, they would see it coming if anybody would. But yeah, since then I've launched I really went back and forth, about what to call the show. And a lot of good titles came my way. A lot of good suggestions came my way. But at the end of the day, I do private consultations for podcasters. And what I'm always telling my clients is to lean into yourself as the brand. So how could I be telling them that and not take my own advice? So I just leaned in as far as you can lean in and just named the show after myself, partly because, well, it's the only show that fit fully at the end of the day. Every other name I could think of, I'm like, well, yeah, but I kind of want to don't just be boxed into what that means. I don't want to just be boxed into what that means. And the last thing I wanted to do, even though I'm in business with myself, so I wouldn't have to fight anybody over it, but the last thing I want to do is rebrand again, Yeah. So I already did it once after 9 years. I never most likely, who knows what kind of changes I'll go through. Maybe I'll change my name, but most likely I won't have to ever rebrand the Marc Clair Show, no matter what I think about anything. If I completely change my mind or my perspective on things that I was talking about in the early episodes, no problem. It's still the Marc Clair Show, and that's still consistent. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And then now, I think one thing I've realized that's become more important to me in the last couple of years, and kind of the realization that I'm not saying politics is not important. I certainly wouldn't say that, especially local politics and the stuff we can most affect in our lives, which is what's around us, which in this case, in the politics case, is the local scene. I think even before local politics, like if you really want changes, they have to come internally. And I say this as someone who has changed internally so much in the last couple of years. And that's really what I wanted to focus the show on how to sort of reprogram yourself. And I say this not as an authority, but as an inquisitive person myself, as someone who is myself trying to figure out how to better myself, how to send myself on the right path, how to put myself in the position that's best going to, help my family prosper. So that can include a lot of things. It definitely includes topics like religion, spirituality, understanding propaganda is a big one to me. I think so much of the political scene, it just talks about like the headlines that we're told to talk about. And I always think to myself, well, all these libertarians, I'm not trying to get on libertarians today at all, but they're arguing about these topics or these whatever headlines are out there, but they're arguing about it as if it's what the discussion should be, when in reality, they're only having that discussion because they've been told here's what the discussion should be. So I really, part of what I want to do is help people kind of see through propaganda a little bit and see, if we're all talking about Elon Musk for some reason, no matter what you think about him, there's probably a reason we're talking about Elon Musk. And it might not be a good reason. So, things like that. And, of course, religion and spirituality is something that I've definitely changed my views on dramatically in the last couple of years. And then sprinkle in a little entrepreneurship, because the material world does matter in some way. It definitely does matter. I think as much as I believe there's a spiritual war and we need to change inward, we have to navigate this physical plane as well. So, material wealth and not just wealth, but really skill acquisition and the mindset you need to have to grow and prosper. That's something I really want to focus on as well. But to me, that might sound like a broad array of topics, but one thing that's that's really struck me listening to my own show, listening to now I've recorded 9 episodes. The next 3 are they're available for my premium subscribers. Let's put it that way. Ever the entrepreneur here. But there is a trend that you can. It's almost like I'm telling a story, almost unintentionally, but it feels like a strange divine providence to me. The way these guests come to me and the way they're laid out in a certain order that I didn't really plan. It's just more like when they respond to me and when I record an episode, I just call that the next episode. I'm not trying to number them in any specific way except for the order I do them. And I have noticed it does feel like I'm telling a very cohesive story, at least from my point of view. I may be biased.
No, mine too. I was actually going to say that because I know you like comic books, and it feels like the new show is like the Marc Clair arc of like the storyline of your journey, I suppose. I hate that word, but I
know we both cringe at it. But
I know. But
you told me when I did my last Lions of Liberty with you, Lions of Liberty interview with you. You mentioned somewhere in the interview that you hated the word journey, and I was like, I agree. And then I intentionally put the word journey in the title just to troll you. I'm not sure if you caught that.
I did, but it makes so much sense though. It's so applicable for myself and you and
our journeys.
Yeah, they are. And the Lions of Liberty version of your specific show, this is not Brian or Odie's show, but yours wasn't necessarily like an arc. It was just you interviewing each week a political subject. And I noticed on the artwork of the new show at the top, it says, "Go deeper." Does it feel to you? It does to me, and I don't want to taint your, look through my lens here, but just politics, strictly politics seems so surface now to me.
Yes, totally. And it's not to say that it's not important and doesn't affect our lives.
Right.
It obviously does.
Yes. Yep.
But yes, it's like that's just scratching the surface. And yeah, I want to go deeper beyond politics, deeper than politics. And it's funny because that phrase itself actually came from just the first mock-up, which was also the final mock-up of my podcast art. Bert Grimm, who did the artwork for me, I think he did yours as well, right? Yeah,
he did. Yeah.
He is a superstar, and he just stuck that up there. He's like, I just put that up there because I thought it was just something that came to my mind. I was like, no, I think I want to keep that. That works actually, because that's what I do want to do. I want to go deeper. I want to go beyond politics, which is what I had pretty much done for 9 years. So it felt very appropriate. And Bert's first draft was his final draft because it was just perfect from the get-go, and we were done. I mean, yeah, I can't recommend Bert highly enough as a gentleman as well as an artist.
Yes, and formerly the best troll on Twitter. I haven't seen as much of that these days. Do politics interest you? Like, would you discuss politics in this new direction you're going? Do you still, let's say, pay attention to just politics at any level at this point?
Well, I suppose as much as I felt boxed in by politics. I guess I don't want to necessarily box myself out of the discussion. It's not on the topics of interest I have at hand. I am bringing Jason Rink, our mutual friend Jason Rink, back onto the show in a couple of weeks, and we'll certainly be getting into politics there between the documentary work he's done and his recent experience there in Austin with Ye and company. There's a lot to talk about, so it would be hard to avoid politics on that one. To me, it's just going to be however things naturally progress. If Tony Merkel was my first guest, and he said something political and almost like started apologizing. He's like, "Oh, sorry, I know you're not doing politics." I'm like, "You don't need to, it's okay. We don't need to box ourselves out either. Whatever happens to be appropriate to a conversation." I mean, even in that recent conversation I had with Jim Bob that we were talking about before the show, we did 20 minutes kind of against libertarianism in there, or criticizing libertarianism, which was not intentional, but it was also very appropriate the way it came about. It wasn't in the bombastic way that you or I or Pete might have done so, months prior during the heat of the post-libertarian moment, if you will. You had to tell the munions for the moment.
And I think, to be fair, there's arguments against libertarianism that libertarians that we know and like a lot have. I've heard plenty of people say, especially during the post-libertarian moment, I guess you could say, that they'd write me, or I'd see them in person and go, I agree with what you guys are saying about this. This is the thing I don't, and they still would say, but I am a libertarian broadly because it fits me more than any other political label. I don't know that you need political labels at this point, but I've gotten a lot of that too. I totally like people that say I know what the kind of stuff I've been saying is resonating with them. Like, look, I'm still involved in my libertarian. Some people would be almost apologetic. Like, look, I hate to. I'm like, dude, you don't need to apologize to me for doing. If that brings you value, and dude, I've gotten so much value out of doing stuff where the thing itself didn't matter.
You know, did playing Magic the Gathering matter in high school?
Nerd alert! Nerd alert! Nerd alert!
Nerd alert. No, but I made awesome friends there and have awesome memories of it. So not everything has to matter in this way. That's kind of what I'm saying, I guess, too. Yes. It's just realize what matters and what doesn't.
I hope Chris, my producer, can put a nerd alert beeping sound as you brought that game up.
I need a lot of them for me.
That's a fair point. You said something in your interview with Jim Bob that I could not agree with you more. And I've said this to certain people, maybe to you at some point, but there is an aspect of libertarianism that feels like a safe space, almost a cheat code, if you will. So you can say, well, yeah, I don't like that side or that side. I don't agree with either side. They're all assholes or whatever. It's like, but you find yourself in this safe middle of the road, quote unquote, like opinion or something.
Above it all.
Yeah, but it doesn't allow you to get in there and get your hands dirty on any substance at all. It's just like, well, I don't like taxes on, I don't support the military and I don't support
They both welfare. Support the empire. So
yeah. And
let's go over here and not even be involved in it.
Yeah. And I always felt that was this weird, safe space, I suppose, and way to get out of the debate without having anything of substance to discuss in that. Did you see that?
Oh, I not only see it, I did that. It was always my safe way out of an actual conversation someone might be trying to have about something political that they genuinely want my opinion on. And I cringe at past versions of myself that 100% said things along the lines of, well, this thing shouldn't even exist anyway, is the real answer. And thinking I blew their minds or something is the funniest part. You're like, oh, I got them. I really got their wheels turning. They're going to be reading Rothbard tomorrow. Yeah. No, they probably just thought I was an aloof asshole, which I probably was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, for instance, like the Uvalde school shooting, I found myself, even when people discussed ways to prevent this or what could be the root of the problem behind some of this, my initial thought that I had to get out of my head was, well, there shouldn't be public schools, Yeah. And
I thought you were going to say, was this even a real shooting?
Yeah.
That's more what would have been my thought, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Speaking of let's talk about some conspiracy stuff, because you will, and you have already, be getting into, I guess, for lack of a better term, everyone knows the term conspiracy theories. What I know with the Lions, you had Conspiracy Corner, I believe it was.
Yeah, that was like a paywalled bonus show where I really let loose with a lot of this stuff and didn't really care because it's just like a sort of a bonus thing. So I've always been into the realm of conspiracy. I didn't even let you ask a question there. So
no, that's you're answering. It's like you knew I was going to ask this. When did you kind of get into that stuff? As for me, I think you and I have been in. I can't remember your entry into libertarianism, but I was listening to Alex Jones, I guess in 2000, 2001 here in Austin, and it's almost as the years went on, I still find it so wild to think that he's like a household name now. Everyone knows who he is, certainly because of that trial he just had, and now because of this Kanye stuff. But it's so weird to think of this kind of interesting, loud, rambunctious guy that I used to see on Access Television in Austin is now, and he was kind of well-liked in Austin, Texas. I would go to these juice bars, these local juice bars. And of course, this was during the George Bush era when he
think about the imagery of you at a juice bar. Just
yeah, well, they sold Alex Jones DVDs at them.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a base juice bar right there, huh?
Well, now they'd never do a thing like that, of course. But, as soon as he gave support to Donald Trump, he was persona non grata. But when he was speaking out against George Bush, the juice type people in Austin thought, what a refreshing voice this guy is. When did you kind of get into conspiracy type things?
Man, not in some ways, in every way, I think even before politics, depending on how you want to define it. I'm not sure what came first. Somehow I stumbled upon, because I used to listen to the radio a lot when I was a kid. I actually to this day, I kind of do it the same thing with podcasts. I need to listen to something as I go to bed to fall asleep, And so I had crazy insomnia in high school. So I would just you listen to the radio, I would find different, but I was a nerd still, now. So I didn't want to listen to music. I wanted to hear people talk about interesting things. So at some point, I stumbled upon Art Bell, And I just was so sucked in by just really his approach to things. The fact that he wasn't really bombastic. He really just he was a curious person and was just very courteous and guest. And now that I think about it, I try to take the same approach with people. So I'm sure there's a connection there. When I have a guest on my show, same with Art Bell, it was like they're a guest in the home. I might not agree with everything coming out of their mouth. He might not, but you wouldn't know it listening because he gives you the space to kind of, get to wherever you're going or make whatever point you want to make. And but that really is what interested me in a lot of the supernatural talk. Obviously, just like movies and pop culture growing up. I mean, I got huge into the X-Files. Fox Mulder was my guy. He was trying to uncover the truth to get to the bottom of things. And that just appealed to me so much. So I've always had that. I think that was in me even before politics. Definitely got into like the Bigfoot stuff. I was just very fascinated by the realm of the mysterious. And I even had like these like Time Life, like Mysteries of the Universe books. Of course, now I think back and I think to myself, I thought that was so edgy, that conspiracy weird stuff I was into. And then I think well, what were my sources for this stuff? It was Fox, the X-Files on Fox. It was like Time magazine booklets. It was all like mainstream stuff. So now in retrospect, I look at it with a little more curiosity. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alex used to say all the time, this is a mainstream source. You could read it online, And then I would think, but I thought you don't like the mainstream media. Anyway, that's all different.
It is I think that's just like a signal to normies. Like, look, you can't just say I got this on the internet. It's on this thing that you say is trustworthy. Where it's an interesting sort of dialectic there, trying to throw out that as credibility while at the same time saying they're all lies.
Mm-hmm. Are there any big, let's say, well-known conspiracies that you subscribe that you definitely are thinking this is legitimate versus some more kooky ones that you kind of blow off?
I hate to be like super, because my interest is really it's interest, and it's hard for me to in general. I would say there's not that much I subscribe to as I really believe this. There's just a lot I'm interested in, and a lot of things I think, oh, that kind of makes sense. And then it's more like when you see certain things. It's almost like when you're comparing religions that we talked about with Jim Bob, and you find the things you like and pick them out. I kind of do that in the conspiracy world a little bit and find the things. But then when you see a few things that make sense, then you can almost make do the big wall and put everything together. But anyway, I'm going to answer the question. I'm not being politician on this. If you want one that I'm pretty damn sure on, moon landing.
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
I'm not going to go 100% because that's very certain. I'll go 99%. I'm sure that it was fake. Now, I'm not even saying we can't go to the moon, although NASA says that. So that's interesting. Yeah. I'm not saying that per se, and I'm not even saying humans haven't gone to the moon. I just haven't seen evidence of that is what I'm saying. And I don't think anybody else has either.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to ask you about because it's one I've heard here and there, but I've never taken a deep dive into it, let's say. But you said a few things. I might have been on your episode with Jim Bob.
We did get into it a little bit, yeah. So it's quite possible.
And what is NASA saying about it now?
Their line for some time now. There's like a specific video. The guy's name is totally blanking on me. There's this autistic dude who is NASA's like the guy who's talks about NASA, the public relations guy. I'll try to find it for you after the show. But anyway, he there's a video of him saying this. He says, well, we used to go. Back in the 60s, we had to get around the Van Allen radiation belts. He's like, well, that's. And then there's this video where this NASA guy is like, well, yeah, that's just the one challenge. We had to figure out how to get around the Van Allen radiation belts. And then you're like, well, wait, didn't you? You did this once, didn't you have to do that? So they're already saying we have this challenge that we have to overcome, which is supposedly a challenge that has already been overcome a number of times in the late 60s and early 70s. And they literally now say, we just don't have the technology anymore. Mm-hmm. They actually, I think they don't even say they lost it. They say that they wrote over the discs because they didn't have a lot of floppy disks back then, or, don't quote me here, but it's something as ridiculous. Is it something along those lines where they say they don't have the telemetry data anymore? So, we got to figure this out again. So hopefully we will someday. This is actually what they say.
Mm-hmm. So for those who want to start listening to your new show, or those who already have been, such as myself, we can expect some of that kind of thing to come up in the future, I hope.
you can expect me not to shy away from it. Let's put it that way. On Lions Liberty, I was very careful. I would try not to get into too much weirdness. And in this show, like I don't know if I'm not trying to lean into it necessarily. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy show, but I'm also not going to shy away from it. If we get into certain topics that cross over into that realm, and I feel it's appropriate for the conversation, then we're going to go right in. And I'm not going to be worried about what I'm going to say or what people might think about a guy who doesn't believe in the moon landing. I don't really care. I'm Marc Clair Unleashed right now, so I'll go wherever I need to go. In my quest to go deeper, if I run into some weird stuff as I'm digging along the way, that's fine. I'm not going to shy away from it.
What kind of took you, let's say, reoriented the way you are headed over 2020 and 2021?
It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's definitely a juxtaposition of events. Even before I met my wife in 2019, I was starting to. I guess I was going through a thing where I was maybe trying to find myself, you might say, and I was actually taking religion a little more seriously. Just my interest in it. For many years, I was never like spaghetti monster atheist, but I was kind of like, I did the agnostic thing, which kind of meant atheist, but I don't want to say it all away kind of thing. But I basically didn't believe in anything. My beliefs were in liberty, in Ron Paul. So somewhere along the way, I did kind of just start putting myself through a comparative religion class, just sort of exploring different religions, trying to understand them better, reading their texts. And that process continues. I'm kind of still doing that. And then along the way, through that process, I met my wife, who was sort of doing the same thing in a very different way, I would say, but a similar thing, actually. And I think we probably met each other at a place where, honestly, if me today and her today met the version of ourselves 3 years ago, we might not even be that interested in them. But we met each other at the right time and have definitely grown together, I would say, in many ways. And one of those ways is just having a family, having a wife, is essentially adopting her son along the way, and bringing him here to the United States, where that was some kind of process. But I've really learned a lot about what's important in life. It's not all dollars and cents, that's for sure. And there's things that just matter beyond, and a lot of those things are difficult. I think that's a big thing I've learned, is that, man, like these last 3 years have been the best 3 years of my life and the most difficult 3 years of my life. And I wouldn't trade them for anything. So, people might think like, why would you want difficulty? And I don't want difficulty. Yeah, I guess it would be nice just to have the new life, have the new things, have the family together without having gone through difficulty. And of course, in our situation, marrying someone from a different country with also a kid from a different country, yeah, there's a lot more complications there than the average relationship is necessarily going to go through. And I'm not saying you should artificially make things to suffer about, but it certainly makes you value it a lot more. And it also makes you value the suffering in an interesting way. It makes you more impervious to it. To now, when I'm faced with a challenge, yeah, I'm a human. I still sometimes get that gut feeling in my stomach, and I feel stressed out. And I'm like, what are we going to do? How are we going to deal with this? But I don't run away to the bar and order a couple shots to deal with it, and try to bury it like I used to. Now I sort of embrace it. It might take me a minute. I might need to get my head around it, but I embrace it. I realize it's going to be a challenge, and that we'll figure it out, because we've just figured out massive stuff in the last couple of years. Again, none of it easy, but I think that it continues to build the armor. The more you suffer and the more you work through that, the stronger you are coming through it, and maybe more adversity comes towards you. Almost because of that, because they know you're ready. The world knows you're ready. God knows you're ready. However you want to put it. I'm definitely using a little. I almost said the universe, and I had to stop myself because that sounds cringe to me now. But I used to say stuff like that. And so yeah, I mean, it's weird. The more you suffer, the more you want to suffer in a weird way. It's like feeling the burn at the gym, I guess.
Yeah.
You are feeling a burn there, but at some point that becomes like your motto. You want to feel the burn because that tells you it's working. It tells you you're getting stronger.
You sound like someone who's had some experience with orthodoxy. I mean, I'm not trying to blanket anything with a statement like that, but that sounds like someone who's at least spoken to Father Turbo.
Yeah, it's probably not a coincidence. I'm only about a week off of my discussion with Father Qualls, and definitely, he the way he put some things, it's not like he wasn't telling me things I didn't know. He just kind of has a knack for telling you what you already know and then putting it in a way where it feels like a revelation, but you're really just realizing the revelation is that you already knew this, not that you're learning something new. I mean, my conversation with him, which I think we'll be releasing around this, like probably around the same day, within a day or two of the release of this interview.
Yes.
That was just one of my favorite conversations. Forget podcasts. One of my favorite conversations I've ever had, period. And I did regret that, like, I try to lump my days together now where I do a few back-to-back interviews. And so I kind of was up against another one with him. So I did have to end it. But I really felt like we were just getting warmed up 90 minutes in, and I wanted to go for hours more. So we will probably, like, I'm sure the same thing happened with you, which is why you brought him back again. So we'll probably do a part 2 at some point as well.
If you love coffee or someone in your life loves coffee, here is the thing to do. I've got an idea for you, as does my friend Stephen Fox over at Fox & Sons Coffee. Fans of Counterflow, use code BUCK25, BUCK25, for 25% off of your order of $25 or more now through the end of this year. Order by December 19th for delivery before Christmas. It's my favorite coffee. It's a wonderful business, really. This guy is so supportive of this show, Counterflow. So give him some business. He's got a wonderful family. Give this small business some money and you get some delicious coffee. And it's really cool. People are going to love it if you just order before December 19th. Give the gift of coffee. Wake people up, damn it. $1.25 for 25% off of your order. Order at foxndsons.com. That's FOXNSONS.com. Thank you, guys. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, the moment we were done, I felt the same way. And he...
It's like, no, don't leave me.
Yeah. And he said, we need to do a part 2, and I thought, well, please do. I was thinking the same thing. And he's a busy guy. I didn't want to press him on it, without him allowing it to happen first. You said when I spoke with you offline that there was a few light bulbs that went off when he spoke with you. Could you go further into that?
Want to go deeper? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, deeper with Marc Clair.
So, well, I'll give you one for sure. And this is actually a tease. This one is in what I call the smoke-filled room segment. It's the bonus segment I do with every single guest. It's like an extra 30 minutes of the show. You got to cough it up for that one. Entrepreneurship, baby. But this was something he mentioned from there. And man, I wish if I knew I was going to talk about this, I would have looked up the word again. It's like locus mei or locus mei or something like that. I'm probably butchering it completely. But anyway, what it is, he basically described it as the arrows of demons. And they're like thoughts that can enter your mind.
Yeah.
Thoughts that tell you to do something you shouldn't do. Thoughts that suggest things to you. And really, and I had definitely had this experience before on major things that, man, I'm so glad that when it happened, I did not listen to the voice. A lot of people tell you to always trust your instincts. Well, I agree with trust your instincts, but I think that's different than listening to the voice in your head. Now, sometimes that voice in your head is you,
Yeah.
And what the biggest revelation there, though, was that Father Qual said, well, if the voice is saying I, yeah, that's you. If the voice is saying you, that's not you. And that was a real light bulb, because I instantly thought of a couple moments where I definitely can say there was the you-I distinction. And I'm so glad that I never listened to you. I listened to I, and that's worked out okay. I never listened to you. Thinking, should I be listening to you?
Yeah,
Not before I was even thinking in that way, but thinking, well, is this my own voice telling me this? And now it actually makes me think, maybe this wasn't my own voice telling me this. Maybe this was something else.
Yeah, indeed. What you started our conversation by saying you are looking differently into spirituality than you were just a few years ago. How so?
Well, I think there was a couple of years ago, I was looking into it more academically, more out of like a curiosity, more like almost like reading a novel or reading a movie. Like, this is really cool, or this is really interesting, and trying to follow the storylines. I mean, in a deeper way than entertainment, but in some way as an observer. Like, it wasn't for me. It was just to sort of understand. And I think now, again, now that I am married, now that I do have the whole family here, I'm sure that has changed my own perspective, because now it's not just me. It's not just an interest. Like, I actually think to myself, like, what what should I be portraying to our son here? What kind of, and it's not going to be handing him a book and saying, read this. It's got to actually be just the way I change myself and how my own spirituality or whatever evolves, and which is going to reflect in how I act, which is what's going to reflect on him and reflect on other people. And so if I want to be someone who tells people that, religion and spirituality and changing yourself is important, I can't just be doing that from the sidelines. I have to be an active participant in it. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I don't know if you're going to leave here or not, because a lot of people have asked me online, especially with certain things I've been saying. I will say I've definitely taken an interest in orthodoxy, to mostly because I've said this a few times on your show. I think I talked about this with Father Qualls. The interesting synchronicity I often see is that people I'm resonating with over the last couple of years, people that come into my life in one way or another, you being one of them, I find I'm resonating with them. And then later, separately, I'm like, oh, this person's looking into orthodoxy, or is it currently a catechumen, or has been Orthodox for a couple of years now that I didn't even know. And that has happened a number of times to the point where it starts to feel like maybe that's not completely random. Maybe there's a reason I'm drawn to those people. That doesn't mean I'm even considering going to church next week, because I'm not. But it does mean I have the most respect for it. And I certainly have a lot of Seraphim Rose books in my house right now. One of them you gave me. So I definitely, it's the one I'm looking for into the most, because it's actually the one I ignored the most when I was looking into other religions and stuff. Because I was like, I know what that Christianity. I was raised Jewish, Judeo-Christianity. It's all like the same thing. I know what that's about. I don't need to read that stuff. Turns out I didn't know what it was about, and never knew what it was about. And I feel like orthodoxy is the closest to the original source that you can go to find out what it was originally about. I'm not saying it's the right version. I'm not an authority on anything like that. I'm not here to be in a debate about that, but it categorically, historically speaking, is like the earliest version of it. I think that's hard to deny, even of people that aren't of that sect. So I think that seems like the place to start. And it does a lot of what I hear and see and interact with in that realm definitely resonates with me. So that's what I'll say on that end as far as my own journey goes. But I'll be honest, I have no plan. I have no plans to like find a church or anything. That's not where. Doesn't mean I won't, but it's not where. That's not where my mindset is. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. What are there ththings that turn you off about spirituality? And this is a broad
just the
question,
because even I use the word and I find it cringe, but because at some point it just does feel. And when I find something cringe like that, it's probably because I'm seeing younger versions of myself being cringy. I definitely said I'm spiritual, not religious for a while. Right. And now I throw up when I hear that, because this kind of goes back to what I talked about with Jim Bob.
Yes.
There's a point when you're all exploring stuff, which I've definitely very much relate to, where you start, it's like you're on the spirituality aisle at Walmart, is kind of how he described it. And you're just picking whatever you like. You're like, I like this thing. Oh, yoga's cool. I like that. Oh, but the Hindus do this. That's kind of cool. And then you've got this like basket of spiritual goodies that you're checking out with. And it sounds good. Cool. It's like, oh, I'm being spiritual. But really you're just like kind of confused and are just bringing in whatever feels good. And it's not that different than just doing that in the material world. I mean, I'm not saying I'm very sympathetic to people doing that, because I did that, and maybe you got to do a little of that and jumble it all up and see what comes out, see what you pick out of the carton, what's spoiled and what's not. So maybe you do have to go through that, but it's like the libertarian thing. It's like feeling enlightened because you're doing that. That's the silly thing. I definitely felt like I was like my spirit was rising because I was like, taking in all these different spiritual or other religious type emblems or symbols or practices or whatever it may be. And that's just silly. You're not enlightened. You might be exploring something in a genuine way, but don't act like I just take in all the different symbols and like come on, that's silly. And that's not a worldview. In fact, it's impossible for that to be a worldview, because if you really dig into what there's a lot of, I used to do this too. Again, all these criticisms are towards myself. There's a lot of like, well, all these religions are just trying to interpret the world and the divine in the way they can. And they're just, they're coming out with different ways. And like, that's really appealing because you don't have to argue against anything. It's kind of like libertarianism again. I don't have to argue against the Republicans and Democrats. I don't have to argue Hindus versus Christians. They're all just doing their best and trying. It's like the inverse of that, because you're not mad at them. You're like, you don't want to offend them. You're like, they're all just trying their best. But really, if you actually want a coherent worldview, yeah, you can be interested in all those things and find them fascinating. I certainly am.
Yeah.
But you can't take them in and create a new ball of like a religion out of it and then think that's going to guide you somewhere, because it's not. It's going to guide you to further confusion.
Yes, that's the Gary Johnson version of religion. Where what was it? Socially liberal, economically
it's like the religion version. It's like socially Hindu and
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I can tell you're an interviewer because you're taking this where I wanted to go without me having to say it. But there is that safe safe space where you're trying to say you're this, but you're really nothing at all. So it's in that middle ground, like, well, I like this and this and this, but I'm not all the way this way. Please like me.
I'm not a Republican. No, I'm not Hindu. Yeah, I like if they say the taxes thing. That's cool, but I'm not one of them. It's the exact same thing, actually. I'm going to start using that, the Gary Johnson version of religion.
And yes, I am too. Let's, too bad we don't believe in intellectual property. Do people sometimes call you black-pilled?
I was getting that a while when I was, going through my phase of sort of starting to reject the libertarian dialogue and then starting to throw some bombs on Twitter here and there. And just talking about like me saying like, I don't think politics is a place to focus. I don't think you can change that much. I've definitely said those about the national level for sure. So I think that gets you kind of labeled black-pilled. To me, I was just becoming more reality-pilled. That's the way I would view it. But interestingly enough, I haven't heard that at all since starting the new show. So maybe there is a reflection. Maybe when people say black-pilled, they just mean you seem kind of surly. And I definitely seem kind of surly for a while. And I do feel like doing the show has been just tremendous medicine for me. Like I feel like, not to go back to the spiritual thing, like I'm enlightened, but I feel like I'm raising myself up by having these conversations. I actually feel like every episode is leveling me up in a certain way, which I honestly never felt like that about Lions of Liberty. I certainly liked what I was doing with it for a long time, and have certain interviews I think are stellar, but I didn't feel that kind of. I feel like I was trying to educate others before.
Yes.
Now I feel like I'm trying to educate myself, and of course, I'm a human. There's people like me. If I'm getting that feeling doing it for myself, I presume there's others out there that will get the same thing from it.
Yes. Yeah, well put. I've experienced the exact same thing. Are there parts of the spiritual journey that scare you?
Ooh, yeah, for sure. Are you kidding me? It's the scariest. The whole thing is the most frightening thing ever, especially, this, others that have gone through the same thing know this. Father Turbo really slammed it home. And this tracks so well with things I've been going through, even if I haven't been going to church per se, I've definitely been getting closer to God. And the closer you get to God, you've said this to me, Father Turbo has said something along these lines, the closer you get to God, the more suffering and the more challenges you experience. And that is really scary. Maybe that's part of my hesitation for not wanting to go, not looking up the church. I'm like, maybe I think to myself, I can read these Seraphim Rose books and from the safety of my bedroom, and maybe they're not going to think I'm going all the way. So maybe they'll leave me alone. I know that's kind of, but I mean, of course, it's very scary. It's something I think to myself. And, even after I just went on this speech about suffering, guess what? I'm still a human. So yeah, of course, the idea of if you get even closer, you might suffer even more. That scares the living shit out of me. So yeah, I'm still a human. I can learn the lessons and still have the human emotions, that go along with those lessons. So for sure, I think the idea of getting closer to God and closer to truth it sounds like what every human should do. And it's absolutely terrifying in a way.
Has the virtue, let's call it the virtue, I suppose, of struggle been drilled into you further than it would have been a few years ago?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My life was easy before. I was in LA. I made good money. Sure, there were probably things that stressed me out, but yeah, I was comfortable. I was way too comfortable, and my life reflected that.
Yeah.
I had a unspectacular, single, comfortable life. And if I was honest with myself, I was probably pretty fucking miserable inside. maybe not miserable. I guess there's different parts in the timeline. By the time I met my wife, I was not miserable. But a couple of years prior to that, I certainly was. Easier to say now than to accept that then. But my wife was even looking at pictures with me from like 2015, 2016. She's like, "Man, she says this in a sweet way, but man, you were like a lot bigger back then. Like you, not even like I was fat. You could just see it in my face.
Bloated.
Like I was just." Yeah, bloated. And because that was a reflection on my inside. I was bloated inside. So I looked bloated outside. That was a good one, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, looking back at pictures is when you really realize like I wasn't in a good place then. Because look at me. You can just tell. And so I like to think I'm in a much different place than then and can definitely tell the difference, especially, with the benefit of hindsight, but with the benefit too of just I feel like I've further honed the skill of being able to step outside myself and look at the true self of me a little bit more. Easier in hindsight than in the present. Present's a lot harder, but it's still something I feel like it's a skill you hone. I don't think it's anything you ever 100%, can do perfectly or else you've ascended all the way, I guess, at that point. But I try to look at myself as I am better, and then that helps you better assess yourself and what you need to do and where you need to go. None of this is easy, but
right.
It's also a necessity because it's actually what you have to do to grow.
It helps to have recordings of yourself, to be honest.
That does help.
I've listened to old ones, and you and I have spoke about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's cringe to listen to just a couple of years ago to yourself.
It's the worst. Dude, try 9 years ago, man. Lions Liberty episode 1 is one of the most cringe things I've ever heard in my life. But you can still go hear it on the old Lions Liberty feed if you
Is that the one
choose.
with Kane?
No, he was my 6th episode.
Okay.
My first episode was Stephen Kinsella.
Oh, I listened to that too. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Wow. Are there? I don't want to harp on libertarianism, but you and I both come from the world, and there's elements of it that I am still interested in, and there's a lot of elements of it that I'm not. Which elements of it turn you off now?
Definitely the libertine, like promotion of sex work, promotion of porn. And I'm not even saying I've changed my mind on the legality of those.
Sure,
although in some ways, I certainly don't want the national government making laws about that stuff.
Yeah.
But at a community local level, my kid shouldn't see porn, like straight up. So I don't know what the mechanism is to prevent that. It should be the parents in theory, but look at the world we live in. So, whatever. But it's more the cultural side of that is what I would argue more than the legal side of it necessarily. Even if you agree with the libertarian ethic, that stuff should be legal. It is horrible. I'm sorry. It's horrible, and it hurts people, and it hurts their souls. And there's a reason porn's free, because it costs you your soul. And I think my perspectives on stuff like that, sex work, and this doesn't even necessarily mean like I don't want to put sex workers in jail. People, calm down.
Right.
But it's the difference between maybe not wanting to put someone in jail for it, which I don't, versus saying it's a good thing, saying
Correct.
It's empowering a woman, saying it's just two consensual adults with a video camera. What's the big deal? Which I used to say, and I used to believe, because I thought to myself, what's the deal? I'm watching, they're enjoying it seemingly. The camera, everyone is consented here, but that's not looking at any of the reality of it. That's just like reading your principal scorecard and checking all the boxes. But then you look on the actual field and half the players' arms have been chopped off. But the scorecard says the game's going great. So look at reality, see what it is in reality, and try to live like that and try to talk about your values through that. You can still say, I don't think we should put people in jail for this or that. I don't think we should either. But there's something between don't put them in jail and this is excellent and should be promoted.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned over the last 6 months for sure is to be thankful. And you kind of alluded to this a little bit, thankful for the storm. You can be put through at various times because, like you said, and I've made this analogy many times, it is like the gym. It's not easy. It's not necessarily fun like a party, and it hurts, but you'll be better when you're done with this. Are you almost at a level thankful for the COVID moment? And just for people listening that don't always hear this show, I in no means mean thankful that people got sick or died or anything like that. I mean, specifically for how it impacted you.
So incredibly thankful. It's as crazy as it is to think. I mean, if that big of a challenge wasn't occurring, if that heavy of propaganda wasn't coming my way, I mean, it changed the way I looked at everything. I mean, I don't know what kind of person I'd be. Maybe I'd be really spiritual or something, walking around with my basket of goodies, just telling everybody how spiritual I was now, and maybe still kind of being miserable and not going anywhere in my life. I don't know. I mean, I met my wife just before COVID, and it felt like the perfect time to meet someone that thankfully had my exact same views on everything that was playing out, and was just as skeptical of everything. Thank God that never had to become an issue in our household. I really felt like we met each other at a providential moment where we both needed that. We both needed each other to get through this, which of course just reinforces, my thoughts about God and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm incredibly thankful for it.
You lived in some places that a lot of people haven't. At least the trek you took is interesting. LA to Mexico to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We've all
it's a little
visited.
bit of an odd route.
Yeah. Can we talk about the cultural differences in these places? And there are places many of the people listening have visited, obviously, and I've myself lived in LA. And but
I know you visited Mexico.
Yeah, that's right. We hung out there and visited our friend Tho in Florida. But I want to compare the cultures and kind of what you experienced in each place. It's interesting because you experienced all of these places in the COVID moment. So you can relate it to that or however you'd like.
Man, it's so interesting. And Mexico's a tough one because we lived in two different parts. Actually, total 3 different parts of Mexico, all 3 of which are very different. Like when the COVID thing first started, I refuse to use that word, pandemic. When that thing first started,
you can put an L in it.
Yeah, we went to this small town about 90 minutes outside of Mexico City, where my wife had some relatives, and that was like, it was in the beginning, but it was just such a small town that you barely saw masks anywhere. It was just, people are just selling their fruit at the market, like going on with their lives, but then we came back to Los Angeles because that's when we started to do, think about marriage and paperwork, and we had to do some of that in the United States. So that was in LA because that's where I did have my job that I was eventually brought back to. That was like where I had the stable income while we did this stuff. So, and then I experienced LA in the pandemic. It never, I felt like they were in lockdown. And I remember like interviewing Tho Bishop in April of 2020. And he was like already living a normal life. And I was like, what? Like, dude, like I still can't like sit down in this restaurant down the street from me. I still have friends that like stand in the corner. They'll come out to a party or something, but they'll stand outside or in the corner with a mask on or a face shield on. I'm like, this is not the same. Is when I really realized like, man, where you live matters. Like there is a different universe literally in other parts of the world. So like, and I, say what you will about LA. I loved LA. Like I moved there in 2002 as a city, as a place to hang out, go to shows. You're close to Vegas. You're close to Mexico. You're close to like the desert. Like there's just so much you can do from there. And there's really cool stuff that goes on. It is a fun place, especially as someone single in their 20s without much direction. It's certainly a place you can get into a lot of fun, a lot of trouble, and feel like you're having a great time. And I made some of my best friends in my life there. So like it wasn't necessarily easy to leave, but it was easy to leave after like 9-10 months there in the pandemic. I mean, man, right now they're talking about bringing back an indoor mask mandate. Right now. Yeah. I mean, it's just, at some point you realize the population of certain areas want this now. So whatever changed in them, if most of your neighbors want to live that way, then you're going to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back in the pendulum and having to put a mask on or, and I don't want to live with this back and forth anymore. And I will say like, it wasn't much better because then we spent some time in Mexico City. We spent about 3 months there while we were waiting for some immigration stuff for my wife's son. We were doing waiting everywhere. We were waiting in LA. Everything has been waiting for 2 years. We're either waiting to leave LA, then we're waiting to leave Mexico. It was all just a lot of waiting, which is really hard, especially when you don't know when that waiting ends. Waiting's not hard when you see the light. Like with the immigration stuff, we didn't know it could take years. Like we could still be waiting, and that was just so incredibly stressful. But where was it? Oh yeah, Mexico. So Mexico City itself. Not worse in terms of the people, because the way they do it is different, but way worse than LA as far as the pandemic goes, specifically in regards to masking. I would say literally as the last time I was there was December of 2021. Almost 100% masking with no mandates or no requirements at all on the street, walking dogs alone, riding bikes. My wife and I could go for a walk for an hour. We're the only two faces we would see, just completely zombified. Now, I'm not going to say it's worse than LA because there were no Mexican Karens. No one's yelling. I never got yelled at. Maybe like someone might, once in a while, a lady might give me a look or something, but nothing like LA where people would scream at you, yell at you. Like it. Mexico's a totally different kind of culture. That's just not a thing that happens there. Like people kind of mind their own stuff. And I think that's maybe part of why masking was so prevalent there. It's like, I'll mind my own thing. I'm just going to put on the thing. Everyone's doing this. I mean, there is definitely a level of legit woke-esque COVID stuff with them too.
Okay.
So yeah, neither is a place I ever want to live again. I'll say that. And my wife was raised in Mexico City, and it's where our whole family is. But I love the city. Again, like LA, love the city. Just so much to do. Lucha Libre. I mean, you got to go to Lucha Libre in Mexico City. If you will go to Lucha Libre with me, I will go back to Mexico City for that particular event. But to live there, I just couldn't do it because this is going to happen again. Something way worse than this is going to happen again. We already have markers on the trail of places to avoid. All right. If you have a place that's currently having an indoor mask mandate, that's a big flag that's been planted that says, don't be there when the next thing happens. And we don't know how much time we have till that is. So get where you're more safe, where you're least. And like, I'm not saying I'm in the perfect place. So yeah, we're in Florida. It's certainly, I think, one of the best choices we could have made. I don't know. I'm still getting to know my neighbors. Maybe some of them will toss me in the gulag. So and nothing's perfect, but I don't know necessarily. I know 100% Los Angeles. You do not want to be there when this goes down. You do not want to be in Mexico City, 100%. I mean, it's simply not a safe place to have a family. I truly think that now. And that's why sometimes I harp on people and I give jabs and this sort of thing, but I'm not joking around either. Like, I actually think you're in danger if you stay in these places. So to me, the places that are dangerous have been clearly marked, especially if you lived in a couple of them. They couldn't be more clear to me.
And Florida seems completely different than to you.
Yeah. I mean, look, I know there were places that in Florida that were doing more masking. I've certainly had conversations with some people here and there that I work with where I can tell the thing is, it's such a huge difference though. They're kind of being on the both sides. Like, yeah, well, maybe we kind of had to do the mask thing. You can hear the confusion in it too.
Yeah.
But you never hear that in LA even the fact that, yeah, to me, it's a little like they're kind of more on that side than I would like.
Right.
Some people. It's nothing like LA where it was 100%, here's the law, here's exactly, and at least they're having a conversation and not just screaming at people. I mean, so even to the extent that I see some less than skeptical views about it, there is still it's still done in a questioning way with people I talk to, but that's night and day. So I definitely think it's different. I mean, back to politics, it's in this case, I'm in this state because of what Ron DeSantis did.
Yeah, sure.
Fact. Because I know it's at least buying us a little time, if nothing else. And now, hopefully, 4 more years. Hopefully, he doesn't get involved in the whole presidential fracas. Because I think he's genuine, at least with what he's doing here. Because there's really no other reason for it. He was a regular old Republican. I don't think he had to do any of this stuff. He could have just gone along the same lines as everybody else. So
yeah.
I'm not saying he's a great guy. I have no idea. He might just be a great politician who just figured out this is a base no one's tapping into, and I can just become the best on this or one of the best on this and just go hard. And okay. And if the result of that is I'm in a better place for my family for a few years, then so be it. I will just analyze the system and do my best to make the right choices. I'm not, if Ron DeSantis becomes president and says some stuff I don't like about this issue or that issue, like, I'm not going to be surprised and taken aback by it. I will say, you have done your task for this time in my life. Thank you very much. Hopefully someone has come behind you that's going to carry that on, because hopefully there's a culture that's building here that's going to say you have to be like that to be in charge of the state.
What makes you happy now?
Well, I mean, actually spending time with my family now, which is all of the time we had spent prior to this was like being huddled in an Airbnb or staying at this place temporarily. waiting for this thing, and when's it going to come, and if it does come, is it going to get approved? And that, like, to have this without that stress is just awesome. Like, we can just do like normal things, like have my son's first Halloween in the US and have him get a costume and like see it all. He's never seen it, and just like little joys like that finally life can be a little bit about just enjoying the time instead of just about being stressed about the next big thing I have to deal with. Now, there's always big things that there are to deal with that come up, but it's nice to actually feel a little normal. As most people wouldn't call me normal, but especially after this conversation. But it's nice to feel that way a little bit for once, because for a couple of years it was just, we're always climbing a mountain. So just the simplicity of that, and then I'd be remiss not to mention doing my podcast. It's really just re-energized me in every way. Like, there were definitely days of Lions of Liberty I was like, I don't want to do this. And not because of the person, just because of me, because I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't getting what I needed to out of it. And man, I don't feel, it's the opposite. It's night and day with the interviews I'm doing now. And it's just, I think it's because it's providing the energy I need. It's the conversations I know I need to have. And that's why it can always be the Marc Clair Show, because I'm always just going to keep trying to have the conversations I need to have. Those might be completely different conversations than I'm having right now in 5 years. Who knows what kind of conversation? Who knows how cringe I'll think I am right now in 5 years? Probably to some extent I will. I'll probably think I'm cringe when I hear this on your show in like a week or two anyway.
No, I doubt that. Not yet. That's too soon, Marc. That's too soon. Talk about the show. What are the plans for it? If I know that sounds like a strange question, but in your mind, what do you see for it going forward?
Ooh, that is I will be straight up. I would love to make it more of what I do for my income.
Yeah,
and it already is. I'm already thrilled actually by the early support. I've got 6 episodes out as the recording with this, and I'm in what is the red? This is how much of a businessman. When you're doing good, you're in the red. Yeah, I'm already in the red. So I'm really blown away by the early support I've gotten. Obviously, a lot of that is because some people have gotten to know me over the years and pretty much transferred their support from Lions of Liberty. So obviously, I'm not facing the same battle that someone just starting a Marc Clair Show from brand new that no one's ever heard of would face. But it still is a slow build. That is a podcast. A podcast is a slow build. As you know, it does not happen overnight. You got to work and put out the content. But if you're doing the right things, if you're having the right conversations, if you feel like it's something good, people are going to find it. And I truly I've been listening to my own podcast a lot. I actually think I can genuinely say these are fantastic, really important conversations. I agree. And if I'm that excited about hearing my own voice, which I can't stand hearing, it's not the my voice part of it I'm into. I'm into what the guest is saying, which is like 70-80% of it. If I'm that into it, I got to imagine that more people are going to continue to get into it as they figure out what I'm doing, as they stumble upon me. I don't expect to just transfer Lions of Liberty audience into this podcast. There's already been a good number of that. I'm sure most of my initial audience is Lions of Liberty people that followed me over, but I want to find brand new people. I want to find people that are finding me because I had a Sam Tripoli on, or because I had a Tony Merkel on, because I had a Jim Bob on. I want those people that maybe aren't sullied by 9 years in the libertarian stuff to come in and enjoy the conversation from their perspective. And maybe I can learn from them too. I really want to build a community out of this. And I'm completely flattered by the support I've gotten so early on that, I knew I wouldn't start off with 0. Like, I knew some people would come over, but it's really, I had people coming in before I put an episode out. And that was just like so flattering, because that's putting a leap of faith in me. And it really means a lot. The people that have done that, and every one of my supporters, just means the world to me, because you're helping me do this. You're paying for my therapy essentially, and you're helping me do more with it. So I have no desire to do the Marc Clair Show 5 days a week. God bless Tom Woods. He crushes it.
Kidding.
Knowing my personality, I would end up hating it in week 3, and I would want nothing to do with it again. So I don't know if I want to do more episodes of the show eventually. I suppose if it became full-time income, I would certainly be able to justify doing more with it. I don't know what that means exactly, but I will say if it becomes something where I can start to turn down days of work, because I work freelance, I take work here and there, and right now it's a lot because just went through a move. I've been dealing with a lot of bills. But if I can get to a point where I can actually say no to a phone call because I'm making more staying home and doing the podcast that day, that'll really be a game-changing moment where I'll really be able to consider where to go next. I think that's, for now, I'm going to be where I am. just really just trying to religiously, I guess you could say, put out my one episode per week and do the best I can possibly do at doing that, making it the best I can make it, and putting all of my soul into this thing. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, and where it goes, honestly, where it goes is up to the listeners. That's where it goes. If it stays where it is, I'm going to be really happy, to be honest. I'm really happy with it right now. And if it's just the number of people I have listening to it right now, getting a lot of value out of it, I'm honestly okay with that, which is something I never felt before. I always felt, I got to get another 10% downloads. I got to increase my numbers. Yeah, of course I want to increase my numbers. But if it's just stays a hobby that pays for itself and lets me do this, man, I'm getting so much value out of it. It's still a great deal for me. Hey, and if it goes somewhere else, let's see. But I'm not going to be disappointed if it doesn't. Which is a hard thing to do. Like, I definitely have had a problem setting. Like, I think it's important to set goals and high expectations, but almost like I think I've set up the thing in my life some before in my past where I've assumed the expectation, and then when it doesn't happen, I feel now I failed. And I think one thing I've tried to do more of, which is not necessarily easy, is just enjoy the experience of what I'm doing. Do a thing for the right reason. I'm doing this podcast because I love it. I'm not doing it to make $1 million. If I happen to make $1 million doing the thing I love, that's awesome. But if I don't, it's still a thing I love, so I can continue doing it. So I'm very happy with where it is right now, even,
As this episode drops, yesterday, you will have released your episode with Father Turbo. Give people, and there's a lot of people, I know now, because I can look at downloads, like you mentioned. There's a lot of people that hear this show that love Father Turbo. So give them a couple of hints of what you guys talk about.
If you love Father Turbo, all right, I'm going to go into shameless self-promotion mode. Because if you love Father Turbo, not only are you going to really love my interview with him, I'm going to need you to ask you to go ahead. I feel like I'm doing the Bernie Sanders. I need to ask you to, once again, I'm going to need to tell you got to go and join either on Patreon, Rockfin, and listen to the full extended version of that episode. I think you can even get, I'm not sure if Rockfin, I think, does a free trial. Don't quote me on that. I know Subscribestar does. I have a Subscribestar too. So you could do this for free if you do a little work. So I'm putting that out there. I'm fine if you do that. You got to hear the bonus segment with him, because we got into, the first hour is, I think, great. And I think what's awesome about Turbo Qualls is, besides his name, which we did go into, we did a 20 minutes just on his name and the origins of his name and how that came about, which is an awesome conversation. But, he's just he actually comes out, you think Orthodox priest or what have you, but you talk to him and he's just talking to a normal dude. It's like talking to a skater dude that or something. It doesn't feel like what I would assume would be the intimidating aspect of talking to someone that of that level of enlightenment.
That holy.
Yes. That holy. That's the word for it. Yeah. But anyway, what we get into in the smoke-filled room segment, I really wanted to ask him about this, because you and I talked about this a little bit. Is the Book of Enoch.
Yeah. Yes.
And what that all means. I don't know if any of I'm sure some of your audience is more than familiar with it, but I was really curious if he believed it was canon. And spoiler alert. Should I spoil? Yeah. Okay, I will spoil. Spoiler alert. He says yes. He believes that it's canonical to the biblical story, which really has a whole host of interesting implications, and we get into those implications. We also tie it into the Ancient Apocalypse series on Netflix, and I tie that into it. And it's not stuff I ever heard him talk about. So I think that part of the conversation is just absolute gold, and it's stuff that you definitely wouldn't have heard from him if you had heard his other interviews. Speaking of Ancient Apocalypse, I also did a bonus show with our friend Pete Quinones for both of our patrons, breaking down, well, I wouldn't say breaking down, giving our thoughts, our reactions to that show. And that actually, we recorded that not that long, about a week after I did the show with Turbo Qualls. So this is all kind of fresh on my mind. So I was able to tie a lot of his thoughts on what that stuff means. I'll just leave it out there because it's way too much to try to get into it the rest of this episode. But I think it's one of my favorite conversations, again, like I said earlier, ever. But I think particularly that bonus segment is gonna blow some minds.
Excellent. Yeah, I got to hear this now. I'm very excited. You've kind of plugged the Patreon, Rockfin, Subscribestar. Anywhere else people need to go for you?
Need to know, but I tried to cast a wide net and just be anywhere people try to find me. So, yes, I have the YouTube because, That's a thing to do, and you can find the most people that way. But I'm fully prepared to lose it at some point. I even synced up a Rumble channel because someone told me it was easy. So I have a Rumble channel. So you can find the Marc Clair Show, obviously every podcast app, but then you can find it video platforms, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute. I take the time to upload to BitChute. I actually get a decent number of views, surprising number. I actually get more views on BitChute than on YouTube, interestingly enough. So BitChute, and then of course Rockfin, where you can also become a supporter.
Excellent. Dang, a lot of stuff there, Marc. A lot of platforms.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's what takes me so much time is all the uploading. That's like, it's like a day of uploading. I mean, like no joke. That is like a portion of the work that people just like never think about with a podcast. You know,
right.
They probably think about the hosting, probably the editing. No one thinks about just the pure uploading. There's so much uploading, Buck.
Thanks, man. Thanks for being here on Counterflow.
Thank you.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that good discussion with friend of the show, Marc Clair. I've been telling y'all about this exclusive club every week, and it's growing in size, but it is still exclusive. And you, if you're not yet a member of this club, you can be if you go to patreon.com/counterflow and become at least a $5 per month donor. At least. You can do more if you'd like. And what that will get you is we're going to do once a month, we're going to do a Zoom call that will not be on YouTube. It will not be a podcast feed. It's just a private Zoom call between myself, sometimes a guest. I'm going to try to do that. And you guys who are in this $5 or more per month donation club. We can do Q&As. Like I said, sometimes I'll have a guest. We'll just go back and forth. I want to read the room, see what's on y'all's minds. Listeners of this show, people that find enough value in this show to donate to it. I want to talk to you guys, and we'll just have fun discussions and see what's going on. So, like I said, patreon.com/counterflow. Go sign up and do that. And as for the website, y'all know it already, counterflowpodcast.com. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. Subscribe to our YouTube page and now our Rumble page. And we'll see. I'm going to keep pushing strong on the YouTube stuff. I hope the channel lasts, but you never know how these things work. Again, as this episode drops, I am on a ban. But next week, the week after Christmas, we'll say, I should be putting this episode on YouTube page once my ban is up. You guys, have a wonderful Christmas. I genuinely mean that. Have a great Christmas with your loved ones, and I will see you soon. Take it easy.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.